Thanks for joining us, John.
I'm happy to be here.
Very good. So then there was another transition in your life, in your business. As DF Seeds grew, there were others that came into the business, and you decided to change over to become the research director of DF Seeds. And in that role, you were able to drive the focus in the development and variety selection for the company, right? So, what were the next products that were going into the product lineup? Tell us how you approached that position. How did you look at your role as research director, possibly as an advocate for farmers? How did you create a mixed trait, organic, non GMO product mix that did enable opportunities and options for farmers? Talk to us about the research director role.
Well, in that role, I got to tell the story of there's five women in the next generation of my family that are all very bright. My two stepdaughters, my two nieces, and my daughter-in-law. I
Oh,
mean, this is a very bright. It's like the past and current president of DFCs. These were exceptional women. There's a Princeton, Purdue engineer, couple MBAs, um, and very very successful.
excellent.
And they basically told me that they didn't care about Monsanto, that they didn't want to risk GMOs on their children.
Mm.
So why take the risk? And I started looking at this, and these are the people buying the next generation of food.
Yes. Yep.
And I did not want to sell them something they didn't want. I wanted to sell them something that they wanted.
Hmm.
And so I became more obsessed with the non-GMO food grades. And it's just a matter of just watching. If I couldn't satisfy the Fab Five that I called them, then I we didn't have a path into the future.
Excellent
And so,
story.
so it's these five women in the next generation had such a deep effect on where I took the company.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So, John, you've referenced my predecessor, the individual that came between you and I, Chris Varner, and the impact that she had on our business. And we're actually going to be interviewing her for the next installment of the DF Seeds podcast. But what advice would you give me? What advice did you give Chris when you handed the reins over to Chris? And now that I've stepped into this role, succeeding Chris Varner, what advice would you give us in this role as DFC's president?
Try to see 5 years into the marketplace.
Mm.
And instead of trying to follow the changes, be part of the changes going forward. Um, the best advice I've gotten has come from farmers and employees.
Mm. Mhm.
Listen to the farmers, listen to what do they want? What do your customers like want?
Yep.
Um, and be a leader, don't be a follower. The biggest flaw that little companies have is that they sell everybody else's leftover stuff and do no innovation themselves. You have to constantly be innovating. I could see Roundup resistance was going to be a problem, so I was one of the very first companies to do Liberty Link.
Mhm. Yes.
And you always have to keep pushing, be known as the innovator. When people had questions, have them come to you. Um, Besides testing, we also did a lot of crop destruct testing on all the original enlist soybeans, um, in all the balanced GT soybeans before they were approved for even sale. So that means we had to have a plot. We could do yield testing, but we had to dump everything back on the ground, and you had to have a camera picture of you cleaning the combine after you're done.
Ah,
and
okay.
and and don't be afraid to do that stuff. Is it just pushed for the future? And don't lose seed quality, because as a little guy, your bag of seed has to look better than the big guy.
Sure.
and that plant is, and the people and these out in the barn that have been so good to me, Jason and Jared and Bob, they know how to make a good bag of seed.
They do. They absolutely do. Excellent. So, if I could ask one more question that's not on the script, John, in regards to innovation, and I was reviewing the background and saw the DF being the first independent company to have the Vistiv license. So, high oleic soybeans are very much on the radar of the crushing industry, right? So, crushing for high oleic soybean oil and the health benefits that come with that product are looking to be increased, right? They want more of this high oleic oil. What do you see, or what was your experience with the Vistiv and the high oleic and the marketplace, and how was that received? And do you see that continuing to grow for the future?
I started before Monsanto when Walt Fair at Iowa State released the low linoleic bean. Is that
Yep.
the nobody in Iowa wanted to do the seed blow up. So because of my connection to ZFS, that I did all the initial seed blow up on the low lin soybeans. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I had the seed control on the low sat soybeans. That I am very much into healthy oils because there's so much money that we have to get the trans fats out of the oil so
Yep.
the oil can be used for a lot of things. And because of my connection to Zealand, I was the only small company to get a Vistiv license, the
Mm.
only small company to get a Vistiv gold license. I was proud of that, but I also had I tested the varieties that came in through the best of best, and I also did something called sidebar testing in the MSU trials, which means that that I could enter soybeans from research soybeans that look like they may be on the front line on all the different sites in the MSU trials. So not only did I have the best of best, I would
Mm-hmm.
have all the MSU sites, so I could do the selection that would work. So I was fairly successful in marketing the Vistiv, and then they get and only 10 companies got a Vistiv license, and I was the only little one.
Right.
And then then I got the Vistiv Gold, and the beautiful thing about that Vistiv Gold is that it could be made into engine oil that was totally biodegradable. Is they talk about the Valdez sinking ship and the oil spill, that every time a ship cleans its bilge, there's a ton of oil that goes in the oceans, and if that could be soybean oil, it would be very ecologically correct. And I got pretty excited about that, to have a motor oil that was totally recyclable, reusable, and healthy,
Yes.
and protecting the big waters. So I am all I believe in healthy food. I believe in healthy oil, and I'm the biggest opponent to almond milk you ever met. We um the DF-155 Silk told us that it was the best soy milk bean ever made, and they
Wow.
tried hard to get control of that.
Yeah.
And dealing with a major corporation, fortunately, I had people wise enough to protect me, but they wanted me to handle the half of the production of DF-155 as a soy milk bean, but they were putting me in a bidding war with Honda Motor Company, which had their own soybean plant. And
Wow.
so we finally backed out of that. So
Wow.
this whole deal with healthy food
Mhm.
and soy food, um, I'm looking at it's the Fab Five market that I want.
Sure.
And the beautiful thing about ecological engine oil, non-fossil oil will lubricate in their engines. There's just a lot, and taking saturated fats. I'm all for I
Yes.
working with Zealand and Walt Fair, the two I've had the privilege of hanging out with really great plant. Now there's plant breeders and there's great plant breeders. Dr. Schillinger that made Asgrow famous, that made the first Roundup bean. Oh, Walt Fair, um, Dr. Sun, Hunt Wiley,
Wow.
and they all talk about the ecological fact of, say, soy diesel,
Hmm.
um, and the non-fossil fuels. Agriculture could play a very big role, let alone um, the food part of this. I am a company the size of DFC's has the versatility to change and do this. This is one of the secret weapons that you carry in your back pocket that the nationals don't have. It's the ability to look at something and change.
Yes, I agree 100%. And thank you for being a pioneer in this space. And I absolutely agree that the opportunity for DF as a small, nimble company is to appeal to some of these niche markets that are growing and have a distinct position in the marketplace. So thank you for that. All right. Well, one last question for you, John. Wanted to get your perspective. What do you see for the future of DFCs? Very much appreciate the history that you have given us and the background on the company, your history, your experiences. What do you see for the future?
If we just come a generic non-GMO company, you're playing with 1,000-pound gorillas, and they can always sell cheaper than you
Mm.
because they can get cheaper tech fees than you can.
Yep.
But you go on the non-GMO side and the specialty side or the modified oil side, those things don't work well for big companies. They work very, very well for small companies. And because of learning how to clean to meet the organic certification, we can change and to maintain the purity necessary for these IP programs. But you're going to also have to keep in contact with plant breeders. I drank a lot of beer with a lot of plant breeders. The only reason I go to Chicago for the weeds for the national corn and soybean meeting, so I could sit and drink with the plant breeders.
Huh.
And
Good,
and
good advice. I will implement that as much as necessary, John. Drinking beer with the plant breeders. I'll make sure that that's a continuation of our valuable relationships.
and that's and I would get more from that. You could attend all the meetings and pretend you're seed company president and think it's cool, but the time spent with the plant breeders, seeing into the future, helping them to see into the future, it,
Sure.
is pretty big because you got to be an innovator, not a follower.
Mhm.
And
Personal
I tried to
relationships are
convince people
critical.
that DF was a research-based company and an innovator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's hard to do for a little company.
No, it is. Well, you've made tremendous strides in your life in this business, and we greatly appreciate all that you've done for DF Seeds, for Deal Fields, for your service in the Navy. All of those things. You've had a wonderful impact on agriculture, on Michigan agriculture, on soybean industry, the wheat industry, and this company as a whole. So again, John, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your impact, and thank you for taking us down memory lane and educating us all a little bit more about the history of our company.
Thank you for taking my company into the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.